story for an update surrounding the deadly bus crash in Tennessee Monday. Authorities say a sixth child has died last night from their injuries. 5 children are still in the hospital. Investigators say the driver, 24-year-old Jonathan Walker, was not on the designated bus route when he crashed. He is charged with vehicular homicide. President-elect Donald Trump, he is taking a quick break from the transition to spend Thanksgiving Day with his family at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach, Florida. Intelligence officials tell NBC News Trump has only received 2 of his daily intelligence briefings since winning the election, which is a much lower number than his predecessors and lower even than Vice President-elect Mike Pence. And this one's a positive. Annual Macy's Day Thanksgiving Parade 90th. Amazing. Has just kicked off right here in New York City with more security than ever. A record 3,000 police officers are stationed along the parade route, with 83 sanitation trucks filled with 16 tons of sand are blocking cross streets in an effort to thwart an attack like the tragic one that took place in Nice over the summer. And you got to check this one out. This snowy scene, not in Minnesota, not in Vermont, it's in Tokyo. It is the first time in 54 years Tokyo has gotten snow in the month of November. And President Obama wishing the nation a happy Thanksgiving in his weekly address today, saying no matter what our differences are after this election, we are still one people. The president, Mrs. Obama, and his daughter Sasha served up a Thanksgiving meal at the Armed Forces Retirement Home in Washington yesterday, where some 400 veterans from every campaign since World War I call home. Back to the election, Green Party nominee Jill Stein is breathing new life into efforts seeking a presidential recount in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. States Hillary Clinton was expected to easily win. After meeting her initial $2.8 million fundraising goal, Jill Stein quickly raised another $2 million to pay the filing fee for recounts in all 3 states. Right now, nearly $3 million has been raised. The filing deadline is tomorrow in Wisconsin and next week in Pennsylvania and Michigan. We're going to talk about how real is this. Well, I'm joined now by MSNBC contributor James Patterson, Director of Africana Studies and Associate Professor at Lehigh University, and by Washington Examiner White House correspondent Gabby Marangelo. Gabby, I'm going to apologize. You're definitely not going first, because I went to Lehigh University, and that's where James is a professor. So, James, you get the first question. What do you make of this recount?
Well, I think the recount's an important effort. I mean, essentially what Jill Stein is saying is that when you look at the closeness of the voting in these 3 states, I think it's almost 70,000 between Trump and Clinton in Pennsylvania, but it's as low as about 9,000 in Michigan. They just want to ask for a recount. And here's what's interesting here, too, Stephanie. This may not overturn this election, right? But it will give us some important information. One, it'll give us a more accurate account. It may assuage some of folks' fears about what may or may not have happened in this election, but it'll also let us know how polling has worked or failed for us over the course of this sort of electoral season, right? So we'll know that if the recount sort of holds up the President-elect Trump's position, we'll know that the pollsters, the public polling especially, was inaccurate, largely because folks were not telling pollsters the truth. So either way, some important information will come out of the process.
Gabby, Hillary Clinton is surely a fighter. She has been fighting for years. And the fact that her campaign is not commenting, it doesn't seem that they're participating in any way in a potential recount. Does that tell you that Team Clinton thinks this is over?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Hillary Clinton's team would have immediately come out and requested a recount in a number of these battleground states if there were any question about the results or concerns that electronic voting may have been compromised or hacked. This is a remarkable turn of events when you consider the fact that Donald Trump spent the last 4 or 5 months of his campaign urging Americans to be aware of potential cheating or voter fraud, telling them that the system was rigged, and now to have a candidate who earned 0.36% of the popular vote requesting a recount to, quote, shine a light on just how untrustworthy the U.S. election system is. I think it is important. I think that we could potentially learn a number of things about where polling went wrong, but Hillary Clinton's team would have been on this in the immediate aftermath of November 8th if there were any serious and legitimate concerns.
James, let's talk cabinet appointments. There was fear going into this that Donald Trump was going to pick the posse that had been around him for months. But when you look, we've actually seen some diverse picks. South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, who had been an opponent to Donald Trump. Betsy DeVos, who's been a big Republican for years, but had not been backing Donald Trump. She'd been critical of him. And Ben Carson was once Donald Trump's opponent. So what do you make of these choices?
I mean, this is not a satisfactory level of diversity for me. I mean, women make up 51% of this country, so a couple of picks here and there of a cabinet of this size, I don't think reaches the threshold for what we would say is diversity. But I think for any cabinet pick, the American public deserves to take a good, hard look at what they represent. And when you look at these picks and what they're charged with overseeing and what they're charged with dealing with in the political realm, for example, Carson dealing with urban development, you think about DeVos, think about Secretary of Education. I mean, for progressives in particular, these are picks that are hard right picks. They don't seem to have the sort of vision of the future for any of the entities that they're going to be overseeing going forward. And my sense is that this is sort of the Trump campaign making good on its promises in the sort of electoral moment. There's no sort of rationale for progressive thinkers to put stock in the fact that even Nikki Haley being chosen for the Trump cabinet somehow means that Donald Trump is going to govern from the center or not from the far right where he's been throughout the whole campaign.
Gabby, if he was going to drain the swamp, wouldn't it be challenging, though, if he were to find diversity candidates, if he were to find people from the outside? Isn't it a little bit tricky? You know, if you're going to go with establishment people, well, then they would have the expertise. If you're going to go for people that are not part of the establishment, they're going to be kind of on the fringe.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump has said from the beginning that he's looking for the best people for these positions, no matter if they are from the inside or outside. And, you know, Nikki Haley, I would say that she's an outsider. She's never served in the federal government before, nor has Betsy DeVos. She's been in Michigan, involved in Republican politics there for decades. Both of these women are outsiders. And I would say that their appointments suggest that all signs are pointing toward Mitt Romney to be named Secretary of State. I mean, if you consider the fact that both of these women were especially critical of Donald Trump during the election, Nikki Haley, as you know, used part of her State of the Union rebuttal speech to take aim at him. Betsy DeVos told one of my colleagues that Donald Trump does not represent the Republican Party, and yet he forgave them and ostensibly and has appointed them to senior level positions, cabinet level positions in his administration. So I mean, arguably, Mitt Romney was far more critical of Donald Trump during the election cycle and is also perhaps more qualified for the position of which he's being considered than either of these women were for theirs.
James, what is your take if Mitt Romney is selected? I mean, Mitt Romney was hypercritical of Donald Trump, and though we've heard Donald Trump's like those who've been loyal to him, Nikki Haley, Betsy, and especially Mitt, you wouldn't necessarily say are Donald Trump loyalists.
I mean, listen, Stephanie, we can play this game of incrementalism where we can try to make President-elect Trump seem to be magnanimous about bringing people into the fold who maybe disagreed with him. But remember, the tone of the campaign was the tone of the campaign. The vitriol that was expressed there while we remarked on it and talked about it in the media, that was the sort of the bailiwick of the campaign itself. The fact that he's making overtures to some of these folks does not, to me, mean that he's extending a hand or that he's expanding the ways in which he's thinking about the world. And the reality is, for progressives, to have Mitt Romney as Secretary of State, to have Nikki Haley as the UN ambassador, or to have DeVos as the Secretary of Education, or Carson as the HUD Secretary, those are not picks that suggest that he's trying to be politically diverse in the ways in which he's running his cabinet. So I don't think there's much to say here. We can applaud him and pat him on the back for coming to terms with folks who were vitriolic and negative towards him in the campaign, but that was the nature of the 2016 presidential campaign. I don't think it says a whole lot about him as a president that those folks whose views are represented, I think, very, very squarely within the Republican Party, that he's reaching beyond the sort of bounds of where he needs to reach as president-elect.
All right, James, nice job beating Lafayette on Saturday. Huge win.
It was.
James, Gabby, thanks so much. Happy Thanksgiving to you both. It is time now for a check on the holiday forecast on this Thanksgiving Day. MSNBC meteorologist Bonnie Schneider joins us now for that. Bonnie, how's it looking out there?
Well, Stephanie, it's really looking very well. We don't have any delays right now to tell you about, but we want to let you know where there might be some. And that's for Seattle, where rain is expected really to continue throughout the day today, and into Pittsburgh. Light showers in the morning, clouds will remain, and we'll be watching for that to kind of taper off later on in the afternoon. We've had a little bit of rain and some wintry wintry precipitation into upstate New York, parts of northern New England. But overall, most of the interstates are looking good in terms of your driving if you're heading out for Thanksgiving. A couple of places where it may be a little slick, a little bit icy into Buffalo to Albany if you're driving on I-90, for example, or Seattle to Missoula. We could see bands of heavy snow. So just take it slow on the roadways because we're still looking at that rough travel there. But really through the center of the country, along the south, east, really looking great. Interstate 10, we had storms yesterday. That's cleared out. So smooth sailing.